I am Jim Collison and live from our studios around the world. This is Gallup's Called the Coach, recorded on August 4th, 2020. Called the Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you're listening live, love to have you join us in our chat room. Actually, on our live page, there's a link right above me there. I'll take you to the YouTube instance. Sign in with your Google account and join us in chat. If you have questions after the fact, you can send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget, if you're on YouTube there, subscribe. Just a great way to stay up with everything that's going on here. And if you want to listen to us as a podcast, you can find us on any podcast app. Just search Gallup Webcasts and you will see us there. Dean Jones is our host today. Dean's a senior learning expert at Gallup, and that sounds super important. Dean, welcome to Called the Coach.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today.
We are glad to have you. I think as you and I were kind of brainstorming a little bit on what we wanted to talk to about the coaches today, you know, there's been a lot of reaction to the pandemic that's going on. It's August 2020. I think a lot of folks thought we'd be out of it by now. We are still in the midst of it, and I think there's still a lot to go. We really wanted to encourage coaches that during this time, there's been some changes that have happened, and some have been difficult. Some of them have given us new opportunities. I wanted to focus or spend some time talking with you about that. I think you have some unique insights and some opportunities still yet, I think, for coaches to lean into this a little bit. And so let's take a few minutes. Dean, what kind of thoughts do you have on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I am excited and actually looking forward to this topic. So just to like replay the tape here. Jim and I saw this coming up on the calendar, and I called Jim and I said, "What should I talk about? And what's out there? What should I talk about?" And Jim said, "Gosh, it feels like it would be great for you to talk about where people are at now and how people make the most of this time. How do you figure out how to navigate this time?" So I really started thinking about it, and I've got a lot to share today. I think this is a little bit different than a normal Call to Coach. And so here's what I'd love to talk about today. It's we were talking about what to call this, right? And initially I was going to call this your comeback strategy, right? But I don't think this is really about coming back. I think this is really about living. And, we're calling this one Living Through the Pandemic. And I think this is really about how are you living your life right now so that you're making the most of your life right now during this time. Not just surviving this time or waiting for it to be over, but how are you living during this time and making the most of what this time is, right? I think by anybody's account, this has been an incredible year, right? This has been an extraordinary year. We are living through a time that people are going to discuss and study and analyze for generations to come. This year has been extraordinary by any measure, and this is one that the grandkids are going to say, "What was it like then?" Right? And we'll all make up crazy stories, right? But it's really been unprecedented. This is a year when a global pandemic shut the world down. And it's really taxing all of our ability, all of our medical resources, all of our healthcare resources. It's impacting people we care about. We are in the midst of it. We are in, I read an article in the New York Times this morning. We are in really an unprecedented economic difficulty. And it's really a global difficulty. It's putting extraordinary pressure on our global economy and all the network of relationships, company relationships, country relationships that support our global economy. And, there are many who say, gosh, we may be dealing with this for the rest of our generation, right? And generations to come, this economic difficulty that we're in the middle of. We're in the middle of a historic awakening and awareness around racism that I think never more broadly have people become aware how racism is systemic. and how discrimination is really embedded in so many aspects of our society, so many, and really the impact that racism has on friends and colleagues and communities. So, we're in the midst of this really, really difficult, extraordinary time. And as part of that, we're dealing with a huge amount of uncertainty and ambiguity. There's just a lot of uncertainty about what this means and what this is going to do, and how will this translate? And so it's just a really challenging time, and that's actually really hard. I always laugh when there's people that there's always people that will tell you that they love change, right? And I will tell you that, and I think I was one of those people that said, I love change, right? But I will tell you that over the years, I have come to learn that people only really love change when they can see it coming and when they can control it, right? We love the change that is, obviously that we anticipate and that we can manage, right? Change that's unpredictable, unexpected, uncontrollable, that's always painful. It's always just really, really hard. So we're right in the middle of all of this. And while we want to think, and we really have moved through some part of it, we've probably not moved through as much of it as we think we have. I don't mean to be, I'm not by nature a pessimistic guy, but I do think there's a good dose of realism for all of us that this is probably the beginning of something that's going to last a long time. And it's going to be really hard for us to know how much of this is ahead of us. And there's a lot of signs every day that the kind of issues we're dealing with, the impact of those issues, the difficulties that result from them are going to be with us for a long time, right? So I think that there's some power for all of us in kind of telling the truth about it. I do think I get this sense. And, I read a lot, so I get this sense that, right, I think to some degree, people have been holding their breath. And, it's kind of like, okay, I'm holding my breath. I'm waiting for this to be over. I do get the sense recently that people are starting to say, hey, you know what, I'm now realizing this is going to go on for a little bit,
Yeah, Dean, I think, and I hear, because I'm talking to the community a lot, I think we all kind of anticipated, a couple months, and we'll pass through this and it'll be fine. And to your point, I think we have some long-term changes that are going to stay with us. It's changed some things for the good. It's made some things more difficult. I think today I want you to drill in or dig in, especially when we think about how our coaches think about this, because there are unprecedented opportunities ahead as people are discovering new jobs, new opportunities for themselves, new things about themselves, right? You talked a little bit about there's been a little bit of an awakening, and I think that's causing people to really think about who they are and where they fit in this. How do our coaches, as you look forward on this, and you could give some coaching to the coaches in this area, what would you say to them?
I just think, first of all, I know that people are in different places, Jim. I know that people are in different places. I think some people, it's interesting, Jackie Merritt and I, some months ago, we're talking about this a couple of months ago, that, there are people that are really thriving in the middle of all of this. This has really given people an opportunity, some people an opportunity to step back, and they are able to refocus. And they still have their jobs, they still have their health, they're safe, they're able to refocus. So for some people, they're really thriving in the middle of this. For some people, it's really been the opposite. They're really having difficulty. And sometimes those difficulties are real, tangible difficulties. They've lost their employment, or they've lost clients, and they're really struggling with that. They may be dealing with illness. They may be dealing with either unemployment or underemployment. They may have financial struggles. So I know, I don't want to be Pollyanna about this. I know people are dealing with some real stuff, right? I think also there are other people that are, as I said before, kind of waiting, trying to wait it out, and in some ways are sort of emotionally on hold, right? It's like, I'm going to watch Netflix. Let me know when this is over, right? And so it's like, hey, I'm I'm just going to kind of wait it out. Right? I'm going to hunker down and wait it out. Right. I think we got to, it's the thing you said, I think is the right. One is, I think that we have to confront that maybe the normal that we knew before this may never return. That the normal that it was, that we knew, it may not go back that way. And if it does, it's not likely to look like it did before this all happened. People talk about the coronavirus and say, like I heard a health expert the other day saying, gosh, this is going to be with us for the rest of our lifetimes, right? So I don't know if that's true or not, but I do think that we can't live in the fantasy that somehow someday we're going to wake up and it's all over and everything's just going to go back to the way it was, right? At least for some foreseeable future, we're going to deal with this. So to your point, I think there's some coaching for the coaches. I think there's some coaching around this. And I wanted to share some coaching and some advice about how to find your footing again. So I wanted to today give you a little coaching on like how to do this. This is designed, the coaching that I kind of came up with today here is designed to empower you. So I always say, like, if it doesn't empower you, you should definitely ignore it, right? Right. So this is designed to be helpful. This is designed to empower you. I don't think this is the right coaching. I don't think that all of this is true. But so if it doesn't empower you, feel free to ignore it, right? I think there's probably some advice as opposed to coaching embedded in this. So just take it like advice, just take it under advisement, right? And the other thing I'll say is this sounds funny to say, but I don't mean for this to be inspirational, right? I want to, and that sounds funny. That sounds like a funny thing to say, but if you hear this as a pep talk, you're probably missing the point. This is not really about inspiration. This is about where do you go to start to invest in yourself during this time? Where do you go to start? I don't want you to hear it as inspiration. I want you to hear it as an investment, right? How do you dig in? And it really comes out, when we were talking about that, what I immediately flashed on is the people I'm coaching right now and the coaching conversations I'm having with people. And there's just a lot of people that either I'm coaching on a regular basis or come to me for coaching and advice, right? And so I immediately started thinking about the conversations I'm having and what I've been telling people to do. So that's some of what I want to kind of provide here, right? So as we said, this is an extraordinary time. And I guess the question is, how do you make the most of this time? How do you start to use this time in a way that it becomes a powerful time for you, becomes a useful and valuable time for you, becomes a time that kind of propels you forward? I think first and foremost, I think this is a time for self-reflection. I think this is a great time to take a step back. Whitney Johnson in her book, Disrupt Yourself, she talks about this thing called the slingshot move, where and she means it relative to your career, where you take a step backwards in your career in order to take a step forward. And in some ways, this is kind of like a slingshot move. I think we've been given a time when there's the opportunity to kind of take a step back and reassess. So I think this is a good time to take stock. And, a lot of the people that I'm coaching, I'm saying, some people I coach are big into journaling. Some people are not big into journaling. It sounds, my version of journaling is making lists. So I make a lot of lists, right? And so that's my version oftentimes of journaling. But I think it's a good time to take stock. I think the questions you want to be asking yourself is really, as you look at yourself, what am I good at? What are the things where I have legitimate strengths, where I have strengths that I'm able to count on and rely on and bring to bear? What are the things that when I look around and when I look at the last 6 months or the last year of my life, what are the things people are acknowledging and recognizing me for? What are the things so that when I get acknowledged and recognized, what are those things? I think those are good clues to where to focus, right? I think you want to look at those moments of inspiration. What inspires you? What are the things that, as you ask yourself, what are the things that inspire me? What are the things where I find myself just turned on and passionate and enthusiastic and feel like I've got, I get into flow. I've got limitless resources in that area. I think we want to be looking again at our talents. And I think for all of us, and we know that this strengths journey is a limitless journey, but what are the talents that I've got? What are the ones I tend to lean into? What are the ones that I'm not using and haven't developed? And how can I be developing those into strengths?
Dean, I think that's an interesting point, because in this area of talent, this has opened new doors that weren't available before. And you may have looked for an area to work in. The door was closed. It's now open. I think you need to go back, like you're saying, reevaluate. I have spent all of my time since March 13th webcasting. We've now done twice. We've done all of the episodes we did in 2019 in 2020 already. Like, we did 50 all of last year. We hit 50 at the end of June. And so it's given me a new opportunity. That door opened. We needed to get it done, right? I just think that evaluation gives people the opportunity to say, where had you heard no's before? Those no's may be yeses now. And so It might be a good time to reevaluate.
Well, and also I think people see with new eyes too, Jim. I think that to your one thing, I mean, it's funny, we would do webinars and Zoom briefings before and have 40 people show up. Now we have 400 or 800 or 1,000 people show up. So one is there's a demand, and the world has changed. There's a demand that just wasn't there before. The other thing I will tell you is that the context has changed, and so everything's showing up differently. So part of it, to your point about there were no's before and now there are yeses, the context has changed. People are seeing everything with a different line. But it's to your point is to really, I love what you said about webcasting, because I think you got to think for yourself. What is it that is my fundamental contribution? What are people counting on me for? What's that stuff that I'm doing? And part of it is looking backwards and looking at what are my successes? What are my failures? What have I learned in the past? But really, it's really looking and saying, where do I need to focus? And where do I need to focus now? What's the thing that's going to make the biggest difference? So I think this is a good time to take a step back and kind of do an audit of yourself, right? And to be able to look to see, what have I got to contribute? Where do I want to contribute? We all know that, and that strengths-based development, typically you don't get wider, you get more narrow, you get more focused. So as you develop your talents and strengths and you start to lean into them and you facilitate them, you tend to lean into them more. You tend to get more narrow and more focused. So to your point, this is a time to be thinking about, how do I continue to really look at those things that make a difference that people are counting on me for? That's a huge thing, right? So that's one, is I think this is a good time for self-reflection. This is a good time to be thinking about all those things. I think this is also a great time to be developing yourself. It's one of the things that I'm really working on with myself, right? Is to think about, where are you developing and where could you be expanding yourself? This is a great time. One of the things that is unique about this time is probably there's more learning available and accessible than there's ever been. Everybody's going online. So everything's accessible from your home office, right? Everything's there. And what's interesting is you see that a lot of it, there's more free learning out there than ever before. So there's more stuff where people are sharing and like that. It is a really, really good time to be developing yourself and to be thinking about, where do I want to be developed? How do I want to be developed? It's an interesting thing. I will just tell us, I have gotten more involved at Gallup in our diversity initiatives here, right? And so I'm more involved in making that happen for our organization and thinking about what we need to do from a diversity standpoint. One of the things that I realized when all that started is that, I've always had my own perspective, right? I never had really gone out and had any kind of formal education around diversity. And one of the things I started doing was calling everybody I know. I called the people that I respect and said, hey, what should I know about this area? What should I be thinking about relative to diversity and equity and inclusiveness and representation and like that? And then I started looking at formal programs and started looking at what's there. So I started wondering, well, why am I not doing this in other areas of my life? So why are, I've been working and learning for, and for, I don't know, the last 20 years, the last 30 years. I should be, when did I stop? When did I stop pursuing that? So I think it's a cool time to be developing yourself. I think it's a good time to be expanding yourself and thinking about, where am I developing? Where am I expanding? How am I cultivating my talents? Where am I continuing to develop myself? And I think part of it is really looking and saying, what are those strengths that I have? What's the knowledge I need? What are the skills? What are the experiences I need that would take who I am, the strengths I have, my contribution to the next level? So this is a good time, I think, to be developing yourself. I also think this is a good time to be working on your well-being. And by well-being, I want to make sure you hear it in through the lens that we talk about, right? Is that all 5 areas of your well-being: your career well-being, your social well-being, your financial well-being, physical well-being, community well-being. So all of those. I think it's an interesting thing, but I will tell you, I think for a lot of people, those are the things that that's really the foundation for your contribution and for your life. One of the things about I always think about this. Maybe this was kind of in a funny way, but I always think about those things that in each of those areas are stabilizers for me. We were talking about this, Jim, the other day. Is what are those fundamental things that if they're out, it's like you're out of balance, and if they're in, that they stabilize you. I always think about the like stabilizers on a helicopter or an airplane, right? I have no mechanical engineering background. Let me be clear. Okay. But, those things that stabilize it so you fly straight. Right. And I think that there's certain things that are like that. For me, part of it is getting enough sleep. As weird as that sounds. One of the things that I'm doing right now is I stopped drinking. And, I know that when I told Jim that, you were horrified that.
You're the only one. You are it. You are it.
There's a lot of people during the pandemic that have started drinking, right? Yes, and but part of what I did was stop drinking, just because part of it's part of me working on my physical well-being. Yeah. And so, and I know, I think that somebody asked in the chat, what are the 5 areas from our well-being book? And I obviously encourage everybody to read it. It's career well-being, your social well-being, financial, physical, and community well-being, right? And so I think this is a time to be investing in your own well-being. This is a time to be investing in that area. I think is really important. So yeah, go ahead.
We have some webcasts coming up on that here in the future. So starting in late August, we're going to be looking at each one of those through some experts at Gallup, and very, very tactical. We say through CliftonStrengths. And so a great opportunity to do that early. Dean, the best thing for me early in the pandemic, I did a financial audit. I just went through and said, because I need that stability in my life. Yeah. And I spent a day or two just kind of figuring out, okay, what's going to work and what's not. And that has been, like you say, stabilizer. That has been such a stabilizing influence for me, not to have that worry of like, are we going to make it? What are we kind of doing? We met with I met with one of our financial planners at Gallup. Yeah. It just calmed me down. It gave me something there's plenty of things to worry about. That was one of the things I didn't have to worry about as much, so to speak, right? And then staying, for me, physical well-being is very, very important. And so staying active, finding ways to get outside, finding ways to do workouts in the house, whatever, right? So yeah, I think it's really good to think through those. I think I need to do some social well-being now, because I'm starting to, I'm getting a little toasty around the edges, right, on this. And it's like, in a new world where we can't do this, what's the replacement for it? Some of the other ones are easier for others than some. I think coaches, you need to be clued into those in your conversations with people, because if one of those gets out of whack, it can throw the whole thing off.
Yeah, I'm laughing because we're number 3, right?
Yeah, right.
But there was a point about a month or two ago where I was laughing because there was a guy that came to our house to deliver, I think it was deliver some furniture or something. He came to our house to deliver the furniture, and both my husband and I are at the front door greeting him. Like never before would there be a welcoming committee, but it was like, okay, we need to see humans, right? This has gotten bad, right?
Yeah.
Even humans with masks, right? So I think that it's one of those things where I think just managing those areas of well-being are just super important for us.
Yeah.
I also think this is a time to be building and creating. So this is a time to be able to think about, what are you building and what are you creating? I think our world right now needs builders and creators more than they ever have. We need, I read a statistic this morning that currently in the United States, there are 30 million people that are receiving unemployment benefits, and there's roughly 5 million jobs, right? So there's a huge deficit. And even if we put those 5 million people, that we fill those 5 million jobs, we got 25 million people that still don't have anything to do, right? And we know that the biggest, best job creators are small businesses. And we need people around the world, not just here in the United States, who are starting new businesses, they are fueling businesses, they are growing businesses. And we need strengths coaches who are supporting those people and who are either starting those kind of businesses, or they are encouraging and supporting and coaching those people to be successful. We need builders and creators right now. And I think also this is a time to start to try some stuff. I think this is a time to give yourself permission, give yourself freedom to try something new and to swing out, because I think it's an unprecedented time. And so I think this is an opportunity where that we ought to be thinking about, hey, what am I building? What am I going to create for myself? This is a time to be creative, right? I also think it's a time to be of service. So I think it's a time to be of service to others. I think that I talked about this before, but I think that never before has our world really needed strengths coaches more than they need strengths coaches now. So I think this is the thing that I want to make sure everybody who's listening to this podcast, everybody who's in our certified coach community, those are people that have a very unique talent. They have the ability to help people to be able to, using CliftonStrengths, to identify their innate talent and to be able to harness that talent and apply it against the things they care about. That is a very unique gift that you can give someone, a very powerful gift. And you are trained and certified to be able to do that. It's not like you're just somebody off the street. You are trained and certified to be able to do that. So I think and right now the world needs that. I always laugh because we are roughly about 2 million people a year are doing strengths, right? So give or take, about 2 million people a year are discovering their strengths. And that is, if you look at our certified coach community alone, that means that every single certified coach who's in our certified coach community has to coach an additional 200 people every year to keep pace with that, right? There's a huge deficit between the number of people doing strengths and the number of coaches that there are. There just are. There are a lot of people, just the people who've taken the assessment, not even the people that are new that they're out there to introduce it to. There are a ton of people who need strengths coaching. And we got this community of trained strengths coaches. So I think it's important for people to know, we need you to be doing what you're trained to do, right? We need you to be coaching people in understanding, becoming aware of, appreciating their strengths and the strengths of others, and then pointing them at meaningful outcomes. Around the world, GDP is plummeting. We had this historic drop in GDP here in the United States. We need people at work now, right? We need people pointed at meaningful outcomes. And who better to do that than strengths coaches? So it's really critical. The last time I said something like this on Call to Coach, I had somebody reach out to me and said, do you mean that we should be giving away our services? And I want to be clear. Yeah, I do think that. Okay. So let me be clear. I think that, yes, you should. Does that mean you should give it away at your own expense? No, that's not what I'm saying. Somebody said in here, the thing about put on your own oxygen mask before you help others. No, I think you 100% should first and foremost protect your own financial viability. I think number one, you should make sure you are financially viable. Goes back to the thing we were talking about, well-being. You need to make sure you're viable, because then you don't have anything to give. As it says in the Bible, God loves a cheerful giver, right? And so number one, Number one, you should make sure you're protecting your own financial viability. But once you've done that, if you have the ability to contribute to others and you can do that, yes, I would 100% do that. I think that's really important. And I think it requires, one, a generosity of spirit. But I think everybody who does that, everybody, if you haven't figured out this by this time in life, let me clue you in. The best thing you can do on earth is be of service to others, right? When you figure out that literally the biggest gift you can give yourself is to be of service to others, man, I'm telling you, that comes back to you tenfold, right? So yes, I think you should use your talents and make a huge difference for people. And if that includes the people who probably need it most, right? And so I think there's lots of people out there to be able to do that, right? So the last thing I'll say about this, and so let me just kind of review here. I think it's a time for good self-reflection, right? So I think this is a time to be thinking about taking stock of who you are, what you can contribute, where you need to focus, what you're good at, what you're passionate about. I think this is a time to be able to do that. I also think this is a time to be developing yourself. So investing in your own growth and development, learning and growing, building yourself during this time. I think this is an important time to be working on your well-being. And I think you should be at work in your own well-being. I think this is a great time to be building and creating what's next for you and for the people around you, right? And there's lots of people I know that are coaches that I see on Facebook or that I'm connected with on Facebook or social media who are doing really cool, innovative stuff, right? Think about Alexis Thompson, who's like this is a human being who's at work on building something and creating something, right? I think about our friend Maureen Monte. I think about Michael Dauphiny. I think about there are lots of coaches out there that are at work on building and creating. And I think this is a time to swing out and try something new, right? I also think this is a great time to be of service to people. I think we need that. I think probably most important than anything else, this is not the time to be going it alone. Probably more than anything else, this is not the time to be doing it by yourself, right? I will tell you, I see people just hanging out in their heads, and I just want to tell you, this is the time for partnership, collaboration, and teamwork. We all need each other. You need to be connecting with other people. You need to be reaching out to other people in new and different ways. This is an imperative. You need partners. You need partners to create with. I have a very good friend who got laid off from his job. He was a sales executive, got laid off from his job. His company was in an affected industry. He was in hospitality. And I could see he was just stuck, right? And part of the reason he was stuck is he had no one to create with. He had nobody, he didn't have a partner to create with, right? So we started having a weekly call, right? So he's got a partner to create with. And so we all need partners. We all need a team. You need to start building your team. Who's on your team? You need a cheering section, right? You need those people. So you gotta make sure you've got to do that. The advice I give you, part of it is I think you need to create miracles. You need to extend yourself beyond the people you normally traffic with. We all have people that we normally traffic with, the normal people that we see and that we tend to reach out to and connect with. We need to reach deeper into our networks. We need to reach deeper into the networks of the people we know, of our connections. We need to expand, right? So this is a time to be building relationships. So as we're doing it together, we're building those new relationships. And, that means finding your allies, people that are aligned with the things you're committed to and you're passionate about, which, by the way, you can't do unless you've done some self-reflection. This is a time for brainstorming teams, putting people together and brainstorming, coming up with some new stuff, thinking through some new stuff. This is a time for mastermind groups and small groups and focus groups, right? I've shared about it before, but I have this group that for the last 28 years we've been meeting, right? We're this group, and we set goals together, we connect together. I can't imagine my life during this time without them. And we used to physically get together 3 or 4 times a year, and now we get together on Zoom and have our meetings. And man, I'm telling you, they are part of my team, right? You need accountability partners during this time. You need the people that you make promises to and you check in with, right? I have a standing call with a friend of mine that we're both committed to our well-being and transforming our well-being. So we got a standing call every week where we just get on and we talk about our well-being, right? And it takes you in a lot of unpredictable ways. You need to figure out who are your mentors, who are the people you're mentoring, right? So who are the mentors you've got? I feel like I've been blessed. I have these incredible mentors at Gallup, and it's an incredible gift for me, to have great mentors. And there's people I'm mentoring. And so you want to think about who that is. Who are your role models, right? Who are the people that you look to and get inspired by? So my point is this is not a time to go it alone. You got to find the people around you that empower you, right? You got to find those people, and you're going to need, I think, for all of us to get through this, right? And not just to survive it, but to really have this be a time where we look back and say, man, that was a rich time. Mm-hmm. That was an incredible time that we lived through, right? Is that it's going to take us bringing that kind of stuff forth. And we got to do it together, We got to do it together. I see like Mark Russell in the chat is talking about the value of the coaching community. This is a powerful community. One of the things I love about this community, I mean, we have some dark moments in our community. You know what I mean? We get a little crabby sometimes. Wait,
what?
Are they talking about us?
No,
right?
No.
Every once in a while we have some crabby moments, right? But by and large, one of the things that people always say, it's funny. I hang out with the strengths coaches in the Bentonville coaching meetup, right? And we do our meetups on Zoom. Right. And one of the things that as new people kind of join the coaching community, the strengths coaching community, one of the things they always talk about is this is a supportive community, that they're having rich conversations about coaching and about developing people with people that really want to make a difference in the world. This is a rich community. And I think that's part of the value of this great community. So let me just pause there, Jim. Sorry.
Yeah, Dean, let me will you take a breath for just a second? Let me say, one of the things I noticed about this is it took intentional change to create all these differences. And if you don't stick with it long enough, you don't see the value or the benefit in it. And that there are some communication channels that had to change. Like I was used to being able to walk down to the atrium and have this kind of influence around people or with people, and not have to work very hard to get it done. It just came to me, or I walked down the hall, and that's not happening anymore. And I had to intentionally start some new patterns that would put me in place. You say create new allies. I have spent some time with some new friends during this that have really opened up some doors. But I think you have to stick through it long enough to see it flourish. Don't get frustrated, because it's, for a lot of people, I just heard, oh, I hate Zoom. Like, I just hate it. And well, okay, you got to kind of push past that and get good at it. You got to figure those things out. You got to learn those things. Those aren't going away. And the more you fight it, the longer it will take you to be effective with it. And so dig in, learn those opportunities, figure out what it's going to take to get it done, and then move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat that we want to take, but one of the things I do think is I think this is the point here is this is a time that can be a rich time for you. I think at the end of this time, you're going to look back at this time and say, hey, I waited it out, or you're going to say, hey, that was a rich time for me, right? Where I grew, I developed, I was somebody that during this time, I really used this time to be able to invest in ways that were really, really, really difference making, right? I also think it's an opportunity during this time to really grow and to have the people around you grow and to really transform your life. And so that's why I think I'm super excited. I think there's a huge opportunity here for people. And, but I think it's going to take work in order to be able to do that. I think it's going to take an investment of time and energy and really digging deep to kind of think about it. I love the thing you said about Zoom. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I think about what this time would have been like if we didn't have Zoom and FaceTime and all the other technologies that we've got. Going through this time would have been, an order of magnitude harder for us if we didn't have those technologies.
No, and I think just this morning I rented a U-Haul that I did completely online. I will pick it up and drop it off touchless.
Yeah,
and I thought that never would have happened ever if this and so there's these new these new pathways, these new ways of thinking, which we can fight or we can harness.
Yeah.
And jump onto them. And that doesn't always mean taking the old way and jamming it into a technology. So I'm going to take what I did in this exercise and I'm going to make it electronic. That doesn't always, and sometimes it does, but I think we have to continue to think creatively about the end result and how can we take advantage now of the new way to change it? You've got an opportunity. How can I use this to be different? Yeah.
I think, to your point, Jim, I think that part of what that I get excited about is part of it is some of the barriers that were real barriers for people in the past have dropped. Our courses are now virtual. So there were people who always said, "Hey, I can't travel and do a course." Now they can actually do the course virtually. And that is incredibly powerful. I think, it's funny, I was having a conversation over the weekend with someone where we were talking about how fundamentally organizations now can draw talent from anywhere. Because with everyone working remotely, the talent pool for everyone just expanded, which I think is really incredible. So I think there's lots of cool opportunities that we're starting to see in the way the world is changing. Part of it, I think we got to have space for is that it happened very fast. So part of what I think is so dislocating for people is that this change happened so quickly that I think people are still kind of catching up with it, right? And so I think that's underway. Do we have some questions?
We do. So Mark says he's working with 12 new managers. Should he focus just on their dominant talent themes first and create a strong foundation? And don't want to overwhelm them. Thoughts as we're working with this is the hard part. I think we all were, for veterans, we were all used to this being able to do the first part in person.
Right.
And thinking of this being virtual, it's been so hard. I think that's, Dean, people have had the hardest time overcoming that. But I'm used to influencing in person. How do I now do this virtually, especially the first session? Any advice on that?
Yeah, I think, Mark, one of the cool things, first of all, congratulations. This is great that you're going to be working with these managers. And one of the things that's so cool about working with managers is the influence that managers have and the opportunity that they have to really make a difference with other people. One of the things, one is you want managers to know, yes, you should work with their dominant talent themes first. And I think that's really important. I always have people think about their top 10 to 12 themes because when we look, the majority of somebody's behavior, we can explain with those top themes. And that's why that's really important for people, and particularly for managers to be able to own and be aware of those. Particularly with managers, I think the foundation it creates is helping managers understand what are their kind of tendencies or inclinations. If I lead with a lot of competition, that's what I go to succeed, right? And to be able to understand what do I typically lean into, and then what biases does that create? So I think, as you're working with folks like that, I think that's really useful. It is, to your point, it's given the context of this conversation, it's going to be different working with them. But in some ways, sounds funny, but in some ways that working with them, I hope you're working with them on Zoom or on video, working with people one-on-one in that way, I think can be incredibly intimate, and it can be, it can be incredibly powerful. So having those I've done a lot of coaching now on Zoom, one-on-one coaching with people on Zoom now, and it's incredibly powerful for people. Not everybody, by the way, I think that there's a lot of coaches out there that were accustomed to doing sessions by phone. So we weren't used to seeing somebody and having that dimension. For me, I love that. I think that's incredible. So, but I'm excited about that. The other thing that's so cool, Mark, about that before we leave this is I love that you've got 5 sessions with them. So I think there's an opportunity really to build a great learning journey with them based on that.
Dean, I also think it's an opportunity to change our mode. So we were thinking it's a 1-hour session. It's this conversation. It may turn into 4 15-minute sessions that are done via text, if that's how the person communicates, a messenger, or we think conversations to and from each other. We have folks at home who have not been home before. Their schedules have changed where they wouldn't have time for that. They might now. It may be a continuous coaching rather than a event in time. And you got to get creative on that. You got to figure out how that works financially and some of those other things. But Dean, to your point earlier, I think this is where a door may be open now where it wasn't before. But you won't know unless you ask.
Yeah.
So we ask that question all the time. What's the best recognition you've ever had? We ask that as part of an onboarding. When I'm onboarding someone I'm going to manage, well, you might want to start asking as you're coaching, what's the best coaching you've ever had? Like, what's the mode that you're most effective with? The paradigm of a 1-hour phone call or a 1-hour coaching session may not be what's most effective for them. So along those lines, Robin had asked Dean, just any suggestions on getting started on coaching? Love all the support, but sometimes feel overwhelmed trying to recreate myself after 40 years of education.
Yeah, I understand that. I think, Robin, gosh, this sounds so funny, but you stumbled into the right session for this. I think more so than any other of the Call to Coach sessions that we've done, right? Like, this is a great place to start. I think all the things that we talked about today are things you should be working on, right? One is the self-reflection. What are your strengths? What are your inherent talents? What do you have to offer? What do you have to contribute? I think for one of the things that's so powerful for coaches is to know what makes you unique as a coach. And part of it is that you're an expert in strengths, but part of it is that you've got a unique background. It sounds like with 40 years in education, you've got a really powerful, deep background to be able to draw on. And that's part of what you want to bring to bear in your coaching. You want to be doing all the things we talked about today, right? One is you want to be developing yourself. So looking at how are you getting coached? How are you developing yourself? You want to be working on your well-being. So you got a great foundation for what you're doing. You want to be thinking about how are you building and creating, and what are you going to create? What is it? What is it that you want to create? How can you be of service? And probably most importantly, Robin, I would tell you, you need to start to reach into the community and be communicating. Hey, look, I'm here to coach. It sounds funny, but a lot of the start of building your coaching business or starting your coaching business is just getting the word out. This is what I'm doing. And part of it in the beginning is people are going to ask you questions that you don't have the answers to, right? Well, what kind of coaching do you do? Well, I do strengths coaching. Well, what does that mean? I think you're going to, what do you specialize in? What kind of people do you coach? Right? People are going to ask you questions and you may not have all the answers to those questions. And that is a great thing. Right? And you're going to, again, just like I said, you need partners. You need a coach yourself, right? You need your team. You need accountability partners. You need your squad, right? That you're going to be working with. So this is a time to be building all those relationships so that when you have great successes, you got people to celebrate. When you have good, juicy failures, you got people to unpack them with and to learn from. Right? So that you get you back in the game. So I think that's all part of this, right? And again, you throw a rock, you'll hit somebody that needs coaching right now. Now, some people, it's, you don't want to give coaching to people that haven't necessarily requested it. Yeah, I've learned that lesson the hard way. Okay, so I think you always have to. I always ask people, hey, I'd love to be able to give you some coaching. Is that okay? Right? And if they say no, you don't. But there's lots of people, and it starts out with building those kind of relationships. So I think that's incredibly powerful. So
I love Ralph makes a comment. He says he's building a membership page that dribbles content to people about CliftonStrengths, allows them for a combination of emails, texts, Zoom sessions on a monthly membership fee. And I think that will work for some. It won't work for others, but I think we have to. That's a mode. That's a method that may work for some coaches and not work for others. I think back to your point initially, finding those where I think coaches need to ask themselves, where have I been most effective in the past? Is that avenue still open today? If it's not, how can I change that? And how can I take what I'm good at and make that, make it work or try some things out? I do know this, if you never try it, you'll definitely know it doesn't work because you have never tried it. So I think sometimes you got to get out and try a bunch of different things. Don't forget, we've got tons of digital resources available for you. And now all of a sudden, Theme Thursday and audio and video on YouTube. I mean, the YouTube numbers right now, we joke about Netflix, but YouTube has seen 100-fold usage during this time. More and more people are used to getting to YouTube. Do you have a YouTube presence? Are you out there talking to people in whatever way you find that works for you? There's some great opportunities to spend some time talking to people that way.
Yeah, I think, I know we're starting to wrap up here, Jim, but one of the things I love is immediately we started talking about this, and people in the community started reaching out. Hey, find me on LinkedIn. Hey, here's a book you ought to read. This is, again, to reinforce, this is a great community. If you're a coach, this is a great community to be in because there's a ton of support, right?
Dean, let me just say, Kim, and ask any other place besides Facebook. Facebook is the hub of that, but then those individual connections, whether we make them on Facebook or LinkedIn or WhatsApp or Instagram or any of those, that's more loosely structured, and so we kind of allow folks kind of settle into those communities, kind of as needed. I get too many groups going, and then people say there's too many things to keep track of. If I said we have an official Instagram a group, everyone would have FOMO and want to. I'm not on Instagram, whatever. I don't do it that way. So please make sure you're connecting to people in the way that works best for you along those. Today, the Gallup Webcasts group, about 15,000, tons in there, and then the 1,500 if you want a little quieter group, the 1,500 or so if you're a certified coach and you're in that group, you can join us in that Facebook group as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. That's great. I think it is really important, just to reinforce the point, Jim, that like you do what works for you in the way it works for you. For some people, social media is perfect. For other people, Zoom is perfect. And I think you got to figure out, like, what is it for me, right? And it goes back to really thinking about yourself and what you want to contribute around that. I do think, just to kind of put a bow on this one, right? I think this is an important time. I think this is a time when we're all going to step back and when we can really use this to be able to move forward. I also think this is a time that hopefully wherever you're at, you're thinking about, hey, that this is a time I should be investing. I should be investing in myself, and I should be investing in others. Last thing I think I'll say is, this funny thing. I think I was thinking about our podcast this morning. I was thinking about, gosh, it's so important to remember to be grateful. Every time I start complaining, my husband says to me, "Do a 360." That's his way of saying, "Hey, look around, right? You got a roof over your head, you got food to eat, you got a bed to sleep in, do a 360, right?" I think you got to remember that gratitude is the access to joy, right? If you want joy in your life, it starts with really being grateful. And I think this is really an opportunity where we need to be, a time when we want to be counting our blessings, right? And I think that's a great way of starting to think about the work that we're doing, right? Is to be grateful that we have each other, to be grateful for the tools that we have in front of us, and the opportunity to be able to do this kind of work, I think is a real gift for all of us. So,
yeah. Dean, I think some great advice, some great coaching, some great opportunities that come out of this. I think as coaches think about, we have this saying, think it came out of the U.S. hockey community. Somebody asked, like, how do you know, or how do you play so well? And he says, I skate to the puck. For our football fans, that means that I run to the soccer or to the football. And so we call it soccer in the United States. But I think there's some opportunities for coaches to think about where are things going and then start changing their actions, their behaviors, their opportunities to be there when that opportunity opens up. No one knew this was going to happen, but we know it's happening now. And so there's some great opportunities for coaches and for individuals to really kind of skate to the puck. So, Dean, thanks for spending the time with us today. With that, we'll remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available now through Gallup Access. Easiest way to log into Access, by the way, gallup.com/CliftonStrengths. That page, if you log in there, it'll take you right to your strengths dashboard inside of Access. If you haven't been to Access in a while, you might want to log in. We're continuing to make improvements to that thing every single month. I was reading through the log the other day of all the changes that went in. And I'm like, wow, these guys have been busy. We, to skate to the puck, have spent a ton of time in this during this time to get really, really focused on our software development and really get some heads down work done. So if you haven't visited Access in a while, gallup.com/CliftonStrengths. The login is in the upper right-hand corner up there, and you'll want to go in and check that out. Plenty of webcasts are available for you. If you haven't subscribed yet as a podcast, you can do that. Just search Gallup Webcasts. Love to have you sign up for our Clifton Strengths community newsletter that's available bottom of any of those pages on the web. Just give us your email. We won't spam you. Once a month, we send you some updates on everything that's going on. Coaches, I know you get a certified coaches newsletter as well, but you might want to stay up with what the community, what we're saying to the community as well. Sometimes a little bit of an overlap, but it's okay. You'll get past that, and we'd love to have you as part of the newsletter on that. Questions can always be emailed to us, coaching@gallup.com. We mentioned the Facebook group, easiest way into the community, facebook.com/groups/called2coach, all one word. We'll get you there as well. Clifton Strengths Trained Coaches, that's the group. Just search for that on LinkedIn if you're not a Facebooker, and that's okay if you're not. You can join us there on LinkedIn. I want to thank you for joining us today. We're going to rush Dean off to his next meeting, so very little post show. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.